change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
All right, here we are. We're back. And actually, I think we should just recorded what we were just talking about between two ferns. We're between a microphone and at the Amazon headquarters HQ two here in DC.
Yeah.
So I keep on thinking this morning I was in New York. I don't know why. I just cannot get over the fact that I'm in DC because I'm just like, I got here late at night.
I don't know how you know what city you're in.
Usually don't.
The fam's Megan.
Yeah, it's so when you get somewhere in the dark, you just have to take your map's word for where we're at. So I'm super excited to be here. This is only our second in-person podcast. Woo. And it's also our second guest, and we're in HQ too. So I guess we're
your first. Remember what you told me?
Female.
First female.
First female. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. So you just
very happy.
The two.
Very proud.
Okay. Whatever. I was going with a theme here, Kelley.
Sorry.
All right. So for those that are not watching, I'm Nathan Chappell here with Scott Rosenkrantz and Kelley Hecht from AWS Nonprofit. Is that their official term? Because you like to add words.
I do like to add words too, because we just grew, which I am excited about. So it's now global nonprofits, but also global health and global research.
Awesome.
Pretty cool.
Awesome.
One title?
It goes on the front and the back of the project. Right. I know. Yeah, you got to think about that.
I don't have any letters after my name. Like no actual credentials. I just need a really long department.
Well, so we're here not just for fun. Well, I mean, we are here for fun, but we are also here because today is AWS Imagine. And so by the time this podcast comes out, all the content will be live.
Yeah.
And Kelley will share how to get that. And we'll also put it in the show notes. But we're just I'm super stoked because this is my third time at Imagine. And I thought for sure last year they were not going to invite me back. So I was like,
third time on stage.
Imagine,
well, yeah. Too, not just in time. Small details.
Little
humble.
Side mental note last year. So I was debating. I was in the side and I'm I had a copy of my book, which had just come out 4 or 5 months before. I was proud of it. I'm still proud of it, but I was like, should I bring it up or should I not? And I'm like, they're never going to invite me back anyway. So I might as well. So all of my photos and video last year on stage, I'm pacing back and forth the whole time. So
I invited you back.
I'm back. So I just thought it'd be fun for us to get together. We've known each other for actually a while. I don't even know, a while. Yeah, it's been a journey. And it's been exciting to see kind of how we've grown up in AI and using AWS as an AWS customer and how we started kind of humble beginnings. And now we actually are a client or a customer that AWS pays attention to, which is a good sign. Maybe for you, maybe not for us. It turns up because there's zeros that go behind the monthly bill. But all that is to say is actually the more we do with Amazon, it's a sign of our growth and our ability to use technology. So I don't know, we don't have a lot to specific agenda today, but I thought maybe you would just talk about what your journey has been. I mean, you consider yourself a technologist or not a technologist. I mean, I say that because I know you. But
because I was so helpful in setting up in the podcast.
Does someone like you end up with all these titles that you move on? And I say this because I think you're an amazing person and I've seen you come alongside clients in amazing ways and you are just such a strategic thinker and you connect dots that other people don't see. So I kind of know how you got here, but why don't you share your story a little bit?
I mean, it's very kind of you. I will say that when I tell people that I work here, I often joke that when they called, I thought they had the wrong number because I was like, have you met me? I really am sure I'm not the person you want. And the truth is there were two leaders at AWS that were leading the nonprofit world. So for those that aren't familiar, AWS is the cloud technology that basically powers your Amazon shopping experience. So all the things that occur when you go online and it's secure and you can search down to the specific bead color on the bracelet you want and all the transaction and tracking is all different forms of cloud technology. And they made that available to companies around the world, including nonprofits. And it's one of the few technologies that is sort of democratized from a pricing perspective because our fee structure is like electricity. You pay for what you use. There are licensing, there is contracts, which is lovely, right? Which means a big company or a small company can use the exact same services in whatever way they need. So what's interesting about it when they called me was that two women who were leading the team who focuses on how nonprofit organizations use that technology recognized that the cloud and how we're using technology today is no longer isolated into an IT function, which it was probably 10, 15 years ago, but it's just the world we live in. And yet there was this extraordinary body of leaders in our industry that didn't really understand it, didn't really know what was available to them, were utilizing things that would make their jobs easier. I was firmly in that category of people who did not understand it, was not using it, and did not understand how I could make my life better. So my role is really about sitting in rooms all day, every day where I understand nothing, which is internal meetings. And I ask questions until I do understand something. And that's a lot of questions, which I have a fortitude to ask that in a room of really brilliant technologists. And then I try to translate that into things I do understand, which is how marketers in our industry need to evolve and how fundraisers are struggling. And so my journey is really the credit of two very, very smart women who saw this need to sort of have better understanding and translation.
Awesome. What were you doing before Content Address? What's your background?
So I started at the American Cancer Society, which is what I like to say where I grew up. And when I was there, it was $1 billion nonprofit. It was at its heyday. And I mean, what an extraordinary moment looking back that I didn't even know I was in. And so I was there for 10 years at all three levels. So I got to sort of experience the tension of an affiliated structure. But I was a baby and cocky and arrogant, and I've apologized profusely to my legal.
Do you have a list?
Right.
You're like,
No.
review.
Please, they've all heard from me so many times. It's like you look back on younger me and I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I'll probably do it again for me now. So let me just proactively apologize to all the people going through today. And then I went into consulting, and that was where I met Nathan. And that was extraordinary because I had never worked in so many aspects of our industry. So that was where I learned major gifts. That was where I learned capital campaigns. That was where I learned healthcare, which is like one of my favorite areas these days. So, and I got to work across all categories. So that provided me an interesting lens, mostly because there's a dichotomy in our industry. I don't know if you guys see this, where we all think our organizations are special and different and have a very unique problem, which is true. And a lot of those problems have similarities. Yeah. So you're actually not that different. But the nuance of those two things both coexisting is something that I try to create a lot of space for. Because if we try to do a one-size-fits-all solution for problems, I just don't think that's going to work. Right. And yet we can't afford to have like every little nook and cranny be different. So those are sort of the things I listen for now. And I think having spent a little more than another 10 years consulting, that gave me sort of a really diverse perspective that now when I listen, I hope that I can identify trends and gaps and opportunities more.
So what's it been like the last couple of years? I mean, you go from the strategic kind of side, and I mean, if you don't know Kelley, she is literally one of the most strategic people I've ever met, who literally sees things way further ahead. And a lot of times you're like, hey, pause, like, let's go back, like, catch me up on how you got to that, because like, you're always right. But like, it's just like, how do you get there? Like, so you go from that fairly independent where you're like working with clients, like hands-on, to like this massive, like one of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah.
Was it a big transition?
It was different than I thought. My mom once said to me that the things in life you fear probably won't happen, and the things that do happen you never could have anticipated. And I find that advice to be like really accurate in life. So I was worried about it being big and bureaucratic and cold. It's not those things. Like, yes, it's big, but it is. And it might be because I sit on a team that does nothing but support nonprofits all day, every day. So our culture is really collaborative, like the nonprofit industry, and really invested in mission like the nonprofit industry. So I might be in a protected bubble that way, but I find it to be the most dedicated, passionate, hardworking, collaborative, authentically caring group of leaders. So that part has been changed. Yeah. It was very humbling as a person to go from a world where I felt like I had learned some things and I was pretty comfortable in doing my job day to day, to like truly feeling so inadequate and lost and confused, and that it was very humbling. It still is. I mean,
and now you're cutting Python.
Python. Yeah.
I mean, I actually walked in here.
I did. I'm really so confident. So, but I had to learn to embrace that, which I actually now share with people a lot because I think that is proving to be a skill.
Yeah.
To learn to embrace the discomfort of not knowing. There's a leadership principle at Amazon called learn to be curious. And it's one that I try to like remind myself of a lot because my desire for many years to know actually, I think, got in the way of progress. And I wonder if that doesn't happen to others. And so I now really embrace, which is why I tell the story of like, I didn't know technology and did they have the right phone number? It's not to be self-deprecating. I mean, I don't mind that either, but it's more because we do feel such pressure to be right and to know and to have the answer and to guide these organizations. And I just wonder sometimes if we were more curious and less confident, would we ask better questions? Would we engage other people differently? Would we maximize each other and the resources we have around us in a way that really accelerated progress? So I try to hold on to that a lot in my world. And I will say, people always say, like, why did you take the job? It's because I believe that our industry doesn't change easily. I really believe we cannot continue to do things the way we have. Like I feel that in my core. And so if anyone was going to be a catalyst for change, it was going to be a company of this size and this caliber and this capability. And so I thought this is sort of an extraordinary moment to use a platform and a body of resources to really support an industry through change that I think is deeply needed, but not going to be easy or comfortable.
Yeah.
The young Kelley Hecht, picture yourself outside of everything. I've
got a picture already. Like 12-year-old.
Make this quick, Scott.
12-year-old Kelley, like running around the house.
Oh no, I think he's going to like arrogant. Go ahead.
Where do you picture yourself in this? Like, where did you see your trajectory going? How does it align?
Like 12-year-old Kelley or like Tommy Kelley?
Little like wanted to be an astronaut or
did not want to be that. Listen, my mom has a gift of storytelling, so we are never truly sure what is real and what is not. She will tell you that when I was 13 years old, she took me on a trip to New York. I grew up in California. It was my first trip to New York, and she said I had a list of things I wanted to do, and on the list was visit the American Cancer Society office.
Wow.
So I don't...
Pretty much every 13-year-old.
Right? Dream. And people are like, did you have a traumatic childhood event? Like, what happened? I'm like, not that I'm aware of.
Was this story before you started working?
Well, there's a picture.
Okay.
So something happened. Whether I asked for it, whether it was accidental. Yeah. And I quit my for-profit job several years after college, making a decent salary and living in New York City, and realigned my entire life to be able to go work at the American Cancer Society. So call it what you will. Some part of me was drawn to the sector and clearly to a specific organization within the sector. I wasn't that kid that like had a thing I wanted to be when I grew up. And I still don't when I don't feel grown up. And, I'm not sure what's next even. Like if I'm here for 10 years or I'm here for another year, I don't know. I don't know what's next. I had long followed a belief of first to then what, which is from think good to great. And that's worked for me. So like my leader who hired me, Alison Freidhoff, is extraordinary and brilliant. And I learn and I'm humbled by her every day. And that was a driving force to this role.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I just go back to, you were talking about how, I mean, it's really interesting your role as a non-technologist coming alongside people in nonprofits that are asking questions. And a lot of them, frankly, don't know where to start. And a lot of them, I mean, Scott and I hear this a lot, like they're embarrassed to ask questions because the further we go down the AI route, the further they feel behind and they don't know where to start. So I can imagine you're kind of a safe haven for them when we're talking about AI readiness, essentially. Like, that's just such a big topic and such a broad topic, but like, is that a lot of it where you're coming alongside, like people are starting to ask questions? Because you said something earlier, like we can't do things the same way and expect a different result. I fundamentally believe that we need radical change, and like the pain is not great enough, and we have to hit reboot on all of this.
Right. We shouldn't need a global pandemic to force that.
Right.
Because that was really the only catalyst we had.
Yeah,
right.
We just
was effective, but just unfortunate.
Yeah. So is that a lot of the work? So like, I think people would be curious in your role, like, are you coming alongside the question askers and then convening the right people and like kind of navigating that kind of AI readiness side, or is it further down the road?
So it's a good question. I haven't thought about it in that way. It's probably a little both. I would say that with AI, I'm seeing a lot of that confidence that I wish would be curiosity. There's a lot of people that I think it comes from a good place. They feel pressure to know and to be engaged and to be informed. But the reality is, like, I know almost nothing about AI. I know this much, right? You guys know a ton. I'm asking you both questions all the time. I'm asking my internal team who's been working with AI and ML for 25 years all the time. I don't want to be disparaging of people, but I hope that people will stop referring to themselves as AI experts. So I'm not really sure what that even means. That's like saying I'm a science expert. Well, science is changing all the time. We're all learning, right? When I get the confidence, I do try to infuse that with some curiosity, and I try to inspect for where that confidence is sitting, because what I'm finding is it's really on the surface, where the little bits that I'm learning about AI every day, really the power is in the guts of the machine, right? And the guts of the large language models and the algorithms and the things that can really harness that. It's an engine. The other side of it is people that really aren't asking questions. I think there's almost like I'm not going to get involved with that. I have bigger fish to fry. So the curiosity is I'm not getting as many questions as I would have anticipated. And that could be based on a lot of different things. I would maybe not be the first person you would ask a question to. You probably get more questions than I do because you actually know a lot about it. And I'm still in the learning.
We get questions like, our boss told us that we have to have AI. What's AI? And then we had one, I don't know, a week or two where it was like, we were told we're going to use AI. We're told we're going to use AI, but we're only allowed to use one AI. And so, like, how is your AI different than the others? And I'm like, oh,
what does that even mean?
It's like having one knife in your drawer in your kitchen. Like, it's just like one knife to do everything. It just doesn't work. It's just so funny. But
I'm going to use one browser.
Yeah.
But I think it's also that people are afraid to ask questions, right? Because there are so many AI experts out there that they think everybody's AI expert for that.
They use that.
And so they're the one who is just solely falling behind. They don't want to assume they're fine.
So let's normalize not being AI experts first. I will say this. Part of like to align my job with that question that as I'm thinking is coming to mind. So as I learned more and more about AI and I've gotten out of the content generation with the different tools that exist, and I have learned about some other use cases and some other applications, I have then taken that as an opportunity. Most of the time that I'm invited to talk to a customer or to be on a stage for some reason, I focus on two things right now. One is I walk people through an exercise that in the end shows them all the places that are already using AI. And the intention there is to diffuse this sort of hysteria of I'm not using it and I'm late.
Personally?
I start with professional.
Okay.
And my point at the end is to say, when a board member comes to you and says, we need to start using AI, you can smile and say, I'm so glad you're interested in that too. We are using it. Let me tell you all the ways, right? So I do that to diffuse the misunderstanding that they aren't already using AI.
Yeah.
And then the second area that I've been trying to shift the dialogue around, especially for our industry, is how AI can drive operational efficiency. So again, content generation has a real role. There's a lot of people that are doing exciting things with that. There's also a lot of sort of debate around the ethics of that in our world, like personal connection and donor relationships. But where there's no debate is that we are all doing tasks daily, weekly, monthly, that in today's day and age can be done faster, more accurately by technology powered by AI, different forms of AI. And wouldn't it be great if we could free up our beautiful humans to do the things that they're uniquely qualified for? So that's an example of where I listen and learn.
Yeah.
Once I start to understand, I think of the problems in our industry. And the two problems I saw are people don't realize they're already using this. This is not as new as they think.
Right.
And two is there's lots of forms and the one that you're paying attention to might not be the highest and best use of it. So that's an example of where I try to diffuse that.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting thing that you say that. I don't get a ton of questions about it.
Yeah.
Do you?
There's a bunch of questions. I was talking to someone who's writing a book about it just the other day. And the first question was, is AI a passing trend or is it?
It's an AI.
Yeah. AI has been used for decades now. Like it's not a passing trend anyway. Yeah.
What was the quote you said the other day? You were talking and you said something like, it's not an if, but it's a how. And then you said something to the effect of like, I can't remember what your quote was. It was so good. I need to see your slide deck. It was like big words. And it was basically like, it's not going away. Like,
Yeah, it's not going away. It's inevitable.
Correct.
I mean,
It's like saying, am I going to use the internet?
AI is
It's not
inevitable. Yeah, how we use it is,
What's
you know,
called.
right. Yeah, so that's where we get concerned about like the responsible use of it. But it is inevitable. But I like how you were kind of framing all of that around efficiency, because I think AI hype is a lot of hype. I mean, even content creation is around efficiency, because it's like either things that you either couldn't do because you couldn't afford all the writers or whatever you're going to do, or you're just offloading and augmenting intelligence alongside. Scott and I talked about this a lot. It's like, stop talking about like models and data and all these things. Talk about like, at the end of the day, like, does this tool, like the internet or anything else, does it allow you to work smarter, faster, with less burnout?
Right.
If it does, those are all good things that, I mean, to your point, the nonprofit sector like universally needs. I've never met a nonprofit. It's like, I want to work more. I want to like be less accurate.
Work more, get paid less. I mean,
and be less efficient. Right. Well, they're like, fundamentally, I mean, you spent 20 years in nonprofit, and you work with, both of you have worked with so many different nonprofits. And it's like, I've never met one that couldn't use a superpower.
Yeah.
And this being that superpower of efficiency is just, it's massive. And the implications to humanity are massive if it's really harnessed well.
So I have two questions for you guys, Alec. Am I allowed to ask questions?
Before you told you.
So here's my two questions on that. Not as a passing fad, but do we think there will come a point where the pace of it will slow a little? Meaning, to your point, 3 huge AI announcements this week, which you're going to talk about on your next podcast. But right now, the pace of things happening in the space of AI feels unaccelerated.
Okay, first, I told Scott that at some point during this podcast, you were going to interview us. So I got that.
Right. What about
Just a question. Just a question.
I can't wait to hear how Scott answers this. It's like, this might be something that we either agree or disagree on.
So I think the pace is specific to generative AI, right? Because again, predictive is going on forever, but it just, you only hear about the end results of it, right? We were able to detect breast cancer 12 months early because of this, right? And so they only come out bits and pieces here, but now it's companies shifting and new companies coming out every day. I mean, I'm doing that presentation that we did, and we have a slide of generative AI companies in 2021, 2022, and then 2023, you could barely see a logo.
2 million.
What? Yeah. Wait, say that again. 2 million new companies?
Yeah. I mean, and that data is now probably 4 months old.
It's like that tech boom all over again. Okay. So you think that pace will slow?
I think it's going to continue increasing, but then eventually that kind of plateau is it's going to become normalized, right?
Got it.
Again, the AI trend, like when I started in nonprofits, it was data analytics, right? And that was predictive analytics.
Right.
Then it was AI. They're all the same thing, just getting into more detail. So AI is not going to be the buzzword. It's going to be
a new form, new application.
Whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So then to your point, you said we don't need to work harder. We need tools that make us more efficient so we can work smarter, not harder. But here's my question. It feels like with the efficiencies we're getting from AI, people are just filling the space with more work.
Yeah.
So how does our industry address that?
Yeah. Well, let me go to the first. Let me go back because I want to. Well, I mean, when Scott and I look at this technology versus other technologies, so this AI, really Gen AI, the advances in Gen AI compared to the internet. I mean, the internet still works exactly the same way it did in 1994. TCP/IP, it sends data, receives data. Like, that's all it is. Like, everything else is just literally like
have the little suit in the back.
It's all just with just like, it's a lot faster and a lot better to look at. And the difference here is that this technology is actually building new technology. And so the idea of exponential technology is that I don't think the pace of the technological advancement will slow because the technology is building technology. We were in a HQ of a Gen AI company that was not Claude, we'll just say that. And when we were talking to very young, I don't know, probably 20s, early 30s, wearing a hoodie, who's essentially building Gen AI to build predictive AI. And so I think actually that side of like Gen AI will actually take the place of predictive AI in a way where you're just going to be interacting with very, very large data sets through natural text and analyzing it and looking at correlations between things. So I think there will be a blend and merge of predictive and gen eventually. Right now, they're very separate domains and you have to use both. Getting to your second point, which if there's something that kind of keeps me up at night, it's this idea where the two technologies are actually very complementary because predictive is about less It's about like creating precision within large data sets so you can actually be very precise. Gen is about creating more. And so those two things are at odds. And so I think most of the people, the AI experts, are saying, go into Gen, go into Gen, go into Gen, without thinking about the implications that more is just not better. I mean, we as humans, I don't think humans want to, I mean, do you want to see more emails than you do now, or text messages, or add images? Like
more coffee and more donuts is all I really want.
I know. Let's go back to like the simple thing, the coffee and donuts, and like this just do human stuff. I mean, I actually, if I put my kind of futurist hat on, I do believe that there is an overwhelm that comes from all this, and not too far in the near future, where like we've realized that we just created so much exponentially more because it was really cool and easy and like profound. And I mean, it is, but what is our ability to consume more? So I feel like there'll be this reckoning of going back to coffee and donuts and like hanging out and being in front of people.
Well, and to your point, to being smarter, right? That is the intention of AI, is to be more targeted and more efficient, right? Which allows us to be more focused, right? The breast cancer example, we become more precise in our diagnostics around different types of cancer, different types of breast cancer in particular. So I don't know, it's something that I think about a lot, because I do think the burnout of our industry is tough. And I was in a conversation yesterday with a group where we were talking about the hidden burden that our industry carries of when something doesn't get done, or when there's free space and you're not using it, it's lives. Yeah. Like no one in our industry, everyone in our industry is touching a life with a different mission. So it's not like I'm going to just shut it off and stockholder is not going to get more money in their pocket. It's like, I'm going to shut it off and someone's not going to have food, or someone's not going to get medical treatment, or so it's a real pressure that I'm sensitive to, because
stakes are high.
And I think you say this a lot about using technology responsibly. I think in our case, some of that responsibility is making sure that we allow the technology to bring the efficiencies and protect the space that is now available for that, so that people can go home, so that people can read and exercise and see the other parts of their life, as opposed to just fill more with more.
Yeah. And I think we'll get there, but I think we talked about that study that came out probably a month ago now. I think it was 74% of people were in nonprofits were saying that they're looking for a new job within the next year. 68% of them are not thinking that they're going to come back to the nonprofit sector. And the main reason is because they feel too many responsibilities and not enough resources, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, my to-do list just continues to grow.
Such an addressable issue.
Right. And so I think
frustrated
as we start like transitioning tasks out to AI and agents, they get done, like those other tasks that we push into the back burner will also rise up. And then eventually we kind of take ourselves out of these holes, and we can get back to that more face-to-face interaction, that human touch that only we can do.
So this is where I also think, a guy that I work with on my team named George, really smart gentleman who's very passionate about AI, has started just sort of like a personal initiative around concept of educating the C-suite around technology in a different way. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, because the way you just described that addresses what I think is going to be a talent challenge, in addition to the talent challenge our industry already has. And it makes AI and some of the technology tools available HR's greatest passion and CEO's most important thing to be aware of, right? But I think that's where the education comes in, because a lot of CEOs, a lot of COOs and heads of HR and these other leaders don't understand some of these inner workings. Yeah. So that's where I hope people will get curious.
I'm glad you took it to that leadership level and the culture level. We've seen, and we set an example of literally a fundraiser leaving one organization to work at another organization that we were working with, because she is a fundraiser and we knew each other through consulting in the past. She's like, look, like I'm competitive. I want to be successful. I can't be successful in an organization that's not investing in insights and technology. She literally like voted with her feet. And so to that point, so from that leadership perspective, I think that's where one of the biggest disconnects is like, look, you're going to be in this constant battle of like attracting and retaining talent based on how you're enabling them to be successful. Yeah. So we're going to have to wrap this up in a few minutes, but
we got to get to learn.
I know we got to get there. So imagine, I don't want to not talk about data for a second. Okay. Maybe just spend like 2 minutes on data, because I mean, I think that's how most people kind of orient AWS kind of primarily as, well, I mean, Amazon is like where I buy my stuff and how it knows what I want to buy, even though I don't know I need to buy it. But also,
AI.
Right. AI. But also like as one of the largest, if not the largest data provider, right? So, I mean, there's only a few. And so we think about the role of data. I think a lot of times we'll have clients say, well, we're not ready for AI because our data is not clean or our data is not consistent or whatever. Where do you start with what's your kind of premise on that when you're thinking about AI readiness with your clients? Like focus on getting your data, getting in the cloud so that you can actually like access it and organize it. That's like step one, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's sort of like a perfect world. In a perfect world, you would have your data in the cloud, you would have an end-to-end data strategy for the data that exists, and you would have a disaster recovery plan.
Yeah.
Those are sort of the three foundational elements that before you even answer the question for your board about how you're using AI,
Right.
I wish boards were asking you those three things.
Yeah.
And so I will say we try to encourage that as part of this enthusiasm, because to your point, if you don't have those three things, your use of AI is limited and potentially not as accurate or precise as you would like it to be. Not because of the way we as an industry have historically talked about bad data or imperfect data. I think that's more of like a data hygiene issue.
Yeah.
This is really more of like a structural infrastructure. Think of it as the foundation of your house, right?
Yeah.
This is more like you're worried about what throw pillows you're putting on the couch and you don't realize you have a crack in the foundation and the entire thing's about to crumble, right? So a dramatic analogy, but they only had half a cup of coffee. Okay. So
Don't worry about throw pillows.
I'm sure you do. I can tell. Well, you have a lovely next to you. So I would say where I get people to try to start is first to just understand what their perception is. And I say this, putting myself with them, most of our perceptions are not fully informed. So when I start with understanding what is their perception of both their reality and their sort of, what's the story they're telling themselves about how their world will be different in the future when they're using AI, that brings all of the inaccurate or partially informed information to the table that then we can align with facts. Then we can start the conversation. The thing about data is it's never going to be perfect.
Right.
Ever. And like the only difference I perceive between our industry and the commercial sector is that the commercial sector doesn't care. Gap doesn't care that they have my information wrong and they email me 7,000 times a day and that I don't buy the types of things they're marketing, right? We take that incredibly personally because again, it's people's lives.
Right.
So I try to diffuse that. I try to talk about actually some of the AI tools that can help address hygiene issues, bias in your data. There's so many great resources now for that, but using your data, it's not a choice. It's a responsibility. And you talked about the employee who you wrote a book on the fact that people are showing you how they feel with their dollars.
Yeah.
They're giving to other organizations and not giving it all because you're not giving them the experience. So to like say, I'm going to wait till I get my data perfect, those dollars are not coming your way.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
I love that line. Using your data is not a choice, it's your responsibility.
It's a responsibility.
For each of these organizations, like they have to commit to their mission, and the data is what allows them to do that better, more efficiently, faster.
And I also think like have a little faith in our donors. Like, yeah, we're going to make a mistake. It's totally going to happen. And I would hope that when it does, we can acknowledge it and address it and move on, right?
Yeah.
People are more generous and forgiving in their heart and mind than I think we worry about. This comes back to that confidence piece. We're like, we want to get it right so badly because we really care. But I just sometimes wonder if that's getting in our way a little bit. And you talk a lot about like Patagonia and these for-profit companies that are coming in with elements of connection and purpose. And it's like, the clock is ticking. We have to reclaim what has been ours for 60 years, which is this really beautiful, authentic sense of purpose in the world.
Yeah.
But to do that, we kind of got to start to make some different choices, and using our data, imperfect or not, is one of them.
I think we can end on kind of the sentiment. Scott and I talk about this a lot with clients is a lot of them come like, well, our data's not ready, it's not clean. Like, when are we going to be ready? And the reality, and I realized this back in like 2018 when we were building our first ML model, was like, it took me a while to figure out that it was like, we were on this journey, but I didn't realize that the journey was never going to end. So like there was freedom in actually understanding that like we are never going to be ready, but we are also never going to be done.
Yeah.
And when that flipped in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, the pressure's off. Like I spent 20 years like preparing data to build a model because you had one shot at it and it's going to be accurate. So I think it's such a good place to end because again, like you're never ready, but you'll never be done. big data or more data. And it's always going to be clever algorithms from a book that we just read called AI Playbook by Eric Siegel.
I got it.
But it's great.
Hey, tell me it's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, the premise is like big data will beat algorithms, but better data will beat more data. And so you're always going to be on the journey, never going to be done. And that's a really good place to start. And so, thank you, Kelley. You're the best. Thank you for giving us a tour of the inside of the HQ2. And I can't wait for an awesome day. Again, if people aren't familiar with AWS Imagine, it's so much content. I mean, I remember last year, some of the nonprofits that speak that are using tech and AI in just incredible ways.
It's one quick plug for it too. Like it's a conference about AWS and technology, but it's not for technologists specifically. Right. It's for everyone in their industry. And the videos should be on demand. You'll have the link in the thing. It's aws.com/NPO. But all the speakers talk about what they're doing and how they're using it. It's super fun. So let's go learn something.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. We'll see you soon at the Fundraising AI podcast hosted by Kelley Hecht.
All right. Never.
Bye.